I'm talking with Bob DeCook and Phil Clampett, co-authors of the book Transforming Leaders into Progress Makers. Bob, I know you've spoken to many groups in the past few years. How do people respond when you ask, have you ever felt compelled to act like you know when you really don't?
Lori, that's a very interesting question. I remember the first time I asked a group that question, and almost every hand in the room went up, and I was a bit shocked. But as you suggested, every time I've spoken to groups, in some part of the presentation I ask them that question in the same response. Almost every hand in the room goes up, which suggests that most of us, most everybody, are faced with situations where either in a one-on-one conversation or a small group or a large presentation, they are compelled to act like they know when they really don't. And I ask myself, why is that? Because it seems like a very strange thing. I think there's a lot of reasons, but maybe a couple of the primary reasons that I believe have to do with the pressure that people feel from leadership or environments to formulate answers or speculate on answers that they really don't have all of the information or all the facts. And I think leaders can create pressure to cause people to feel like they need to do that because, you know, in our society, it just doesn't seem to be okay to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Phil, any impressions you'd like to add?
Well, I think those create problems sometimes because it creates a situation where people have a false sense of security, and they get it from leaders that may not be able to actually provide it. In fact, most of the time they can't, and you know, you think of lots of examples of that where people invest funds, for example, in Madoff, in the Madoff scandal, and you know, he provided a false sense of security to people. And the other part I think that it undermines is it also absolves them of responsibility to a certain extent, where if I put my faith in some leader who's providing it, I may not have as much commitment to actually doing it and following through and being engaged in the process. And so those are some of the problems I see that emerge in this kind of environment where you're acting like you know when you really don't. And it's kind of a dual problem. It's a problem that leaders have, and it's a dual problem. And the other side of the problem is what followers have.
And you know, Phil, it's debilitating because you don't get the best out of any conversation or any group if you focus on one person's answer. You don't get other people contributing. You get people feeling uncomfortable to contribute ideas that they may not feel are well placed in a conversation like that. So it stifles creativity, it stifles the best ideas being formulated in groups.
Absolutely.
So where do we go at this point? What are some solutions to combat against this tendency?
It's an environment shaping issue. Either the leaders or the people in conversations need to certainly hear from people who seem to be more informed on an issue, but they need to draw out other opinions. They need to look for the people who aren't necessarily speaking, because it's those people that are probably feeling uncomfortable with the certainty of someone else's answer. I think that you need to shape environments where it's more about conversation than presentation. A little more informality rather than formality helps to reduce this tendency.
I also think in an environment of, for example, of education, we're oftentimes in an environment where somebody, what's the right answer? Mm-hmm. Instead of asking students and asking people to think through it in a reasonable way. And I think that right answer syndrome sometimes contributes to this, when oftentimes an environment is there are a lot of right answers. There's a lot more wrong answers than there are right answers, but there are a lot of different ways to do it. And I think that's one of the things that great leaders instill in everybody. There's a lot of right ways to do this, and we need to find the one that we can live with and maximize the most. And I also think that you can allow people in your organization to develop solutions on their own rather than looking to leadership to always provide it. I can think of one person that we interviewed for our book, and one of the things that she said was, she came back with the survey results that said employees were dissatisfied with their pay. Well, instead of saying that's all my responsibility as the owner of this company, she said, I see that she went to all the employees in a meeting and said, I see that you found this as an issue. What can we do about it rather than what can I do about it? And that's the kind of in leadership that you can embrace in these environments that is really encourages people to buy in, encourages people to be participative in a true sense of the word. And I think that's the way in which you get past this sense that the leader has to have all the answers.
And leaders, you make some good points there, and you frame the issue quite well. Leaders need to ask the right questions rather than what's the answer to this or what's the proposal, what are the options? What do you think the possibilities for a solution might be to give the conversation a little more flexibility to allow other angles and choices into the result?
Definitely.
I thank you both for moving us beyond the have you ever question to how can we make progress on this particular issue.